What if everything you believed about your family was a lie? What if the man you grew up calling dad wasn't really your father at all? Imagine discovering, after decades of loyalty, love, and shared history, that a secret, so explosive it could shatter an entire monarchy, had been hiding in plain sight all along. This isn't the plot of a scandalous Netflix series. This is the life of Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, and the revelation that would push him to cut all ties with the family he once called his own. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. It all began with whispers. Soft, subtle, almost laughable at first. Rumors that Harry had long brushed aside as impossible, or worse, cruel. But whispers have a way of growing. They gather momentum, they find the cracks, and they seep in through the tiniest openings. And for Harry, the cracks had always been there. An uneasy tension between him and his brother William, a certain distance from his father, Prince Charles, and moments of unexplained coldness that left him questioning his place in the royal world. For decades, he assumed it was the burden of being the younger prince, the one who always lived in someone else's shadow. But it wasn't just about being second in line. It was something far deeper, something unthinkable. Then came the letter. Not just any letter. A plain envelope, delivered discreetly, that seemed to hum with the weight of decades-old secrets. Inside, documents that no child, no prince, should ever have to see. DNA results. Confirmations that could not be denied. Proof that would change the course of a life. And within minutes of opening that envelope, Harry knew the unimaginable was true. James Hewitt, the cavalry officer rumored to have been involved with Princess Diana, was not just a footnote in royal gossip. He was, in fact, his biological father. For Harry, the shock was seismic. The walls of his world, carefully constructed from protocol, privilege, and public expectation, crumbled instantly. Every memory from childhood flickered through his mind. The moments of doubt when his father's attention seemed reserved for William, the whispered comments behind closed doors, the strange silences that made him feel invisible. It wasn't just betrayal. It was a fundamental redefinition of identity. Who am I, if the man I thought was my father is not? What does this mean for my family? For my future? For the monarchy itself? The palace did not handle it well. No one does when secrets of this magnitude escape the shadows. Advisors scrambled. Courtiers whispered in hallways. And at the center of it all stood Harry, facing a truth so raw, so personal, that it demanded action. But the action he would take would be unprecedented, bold, unforgiving. The world would watch in stunned silence as the youngest prince of the United Kingdom began to sever ties with the very institution that had raised him. The timing of this revelation could not have been worse, or perhaps, from Harry's perspective, it could not have been more necessary. Public fascination with the royal family had never been higher. Every tweet, every news segment, every tabloid cover now acted as an amplifier for his private pain. And in the court of public opinion, secrets, even long-hidden ones, cannot stay buried forever. Harry found himself walking a tightrope between private grief and public scrutiny, knowing that the story he had just uncovered was about to explode across headlines worldwide. What makes this story even more compelling, even more human, is that it isn't just about royal scandal. It's about identity, loyalty, betrayal, and the search for truth in a world where appearances are everything. Harry's struggle is one many of us can relate to, in a much smaller but no less painful way. Discovering that those you trust most may not be who you thought they were. That the very foundation of your world is built on assumptions that could be entirely false. Yet, despite the chaos, Harry's instinct was clear. He would confront the truth head-on. He would not hide. He would not pretend. And he would not allow the past to dictate his future. But doing so would come at a cost. Severing ties with a family of centuries-old tradition, of expectations, and of relentless scrutiny is not something taken lightly. The emotional toll would be enormous. The palace would react, the media would swarm, and the public would judge. But for Harry, there was no turning back. There could be no compromise. Because the truth, finally revealed, demanded honesty above all else. And while the world waited for a statement, for a denial, for some glimpse into the inner workings of the royal machine, Harry made his decision. It wasn't just a decision about the past. It was about reclaiming agency over his life. About asserting that while history and bloodlines may define part of a person, they do not control their destiny. But the repercussions of this choice were only beginning to unfold. Allies would be tested, friendships would fracture, and the brother he once trusted implicitly, William, would become a central figure in a drama that was about to consume the palace and the public imagination alike. The story that follows is one of intrigue, heartbreak, and astonishing revelations. It is about a prince forced to navigate a world where family, loyalty, and truth collide in the most explosive way imaginable. Over the next hour, we will delve into the moments leading up to the DNA revelation, the fallout that followed, and the steps Harry took as he reshaped his identity in the shadow of a secret that had haunted him for years. Every chapter will reveal not just facts, but emotions, the fear, the anger, the betrayal, the hope. You'll witness conversations that never made the headlines, confrontations that happened behind closed doors, and the human side of a story that has captivated the world. But even as we explore these revelations, one question looms over everything. How does a prince reconcile the man he thought he was with the truth he now faces? How do you move forward when the foundation of your life has been shaken to its core? And, perhaps most importantly, how does one survive when the world watches every step, every decision, every tear? What came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What does it feel like to grow up in a world where everyone watches your every move, but no one really sees you? Where your life is scripted before you even take your first step, and your identity is shaped by expectations rather than choice. For Prince Harry, this question was never hypothetical. It was lived experience. From the moment he entered the world as the younger son of Princess Diana and Prince Charles, Harry's existence was framed by public fascination and private complexity. He was adored, yes, but adored as a symbol, a spectacle, not always as a child with fears, insecurities, and a hunger for belonging. The early years were paradoxical. On one hand, he was surrounded by privilege, castles, tutors, protection, and a life most could only dream of. On the other hand, he was acutely aware of the invisible walls that separated him from authentic connection. The palace was a world of appearances. Smiles were curated, affection measured. And for Harry, the difference between perception and reality was never clearer than in the subtle dynamics with his brother, William. William, the heir, the golden child, the one who carried the weight of the monarchy with seeming ease. And Harry, the second son, expected to follow, to smile, to behave, to remain charmingly in the background. But being the background didn't feel safe or simple. It felt lonely. Even as a young boy, Harry sensed something was off. Moments of tension with his father were fleeting yet memorable. A look, a hesitation, a refusal to engage fully. These small cracks, invisible to the world, were seismic to Harry. He remembers trying to explain his feelings, only to be told, subtly but consistently, that they were trivial, that he should focus on duty rather than emotion. But feelings don't obey protocol. They don't bend for tradition. And for Harry, they grew louder over time. Then there was Diana. Princess Diana, beloved by millions, but in her private moments, a mother grappling with her own demons. She gave Harry love, yes, fierce and protective, but even that came wrapped in her own complex emotional struggles. Diana's attention was stretched thin across two boys, across public duties, and across her own battles with the pressures of being royal. Harry adored his mother, but he also absorbed her anxieties, her fears, and her frustration with a system that demanded perfection from its heirs and compliance from everyone else. In that environment, Harry learned early. To protect oneself, you often have to look inward, to hide what you feel from those who are supposed to understand you best. School life offered little relief. Though Harry attended prestigious institutions, the experience was fraught with social tension. Privilege made him a target for envy and cruelty, even among the elite. Yet there was also a protective bubble, created by the palace, the staff, and the unspoken rules that dictated who could approach him and how. This bubble insulated him from certain dangers, but it also amplified isolation. If no one can relate to your world, if everyone is performing alongside you, can you ever truly belong? Harry often wondered. The whispers of something more, something hidden in the layers of his family, began early. Offhand comments, half-jokes, veiled remarks, things that might be dismissed by others as gossip, but for Harry, they lingered. Why did certain adults always look at him differently? Why were some moments of affection fleeting, inconsistent, or absent? Questions that went unanswered piled up. And yet, there was a part of him that, deep down, refused to ask outright. Perhaps the answers were too dangerous. Perhaps the truth would unravel everything he had known. As adolescence arrived, the tension grew. Rebellion, the kind we all expect in teenagers, manifested differently for Harry. Risk-taking, anger, and impulsive behavior were more than mere teen antics. They were a silent protest against the invisible walls around him. He sought normalcy in unconventional ways. Army cadet programs, friendships outside the palace, moments of anonymity. Each escape offered fleeting freedom, but always reminded him of his difference. The world knew him as a prince, a symbol, a public figure. But in private, he was a boy seeking truth, love, and a sense of belonging. It was during these years that the shadow of James Hewitt entered the tapestry of Harry's life, though the full implications were hidden, unspoken. Diana's well-documented affair with Hewitt, a charming and dashing cavalry officer, created whispers that permeated the palace walls. Harry, still a child, didn't fully understand what it meant. But children are perceptive. They notice tension, secrets, and avoidance. And over time, the pieces began to form a puzzle Harry didn't know he wanted to solve. He sensed a story unspoken, a secret too heavy for anyone to reveal openly. And while others dismissed it as adult drama, for Harry, it was a quiet, nagging undercurrent in every interaction, every family gathering, every look from his father. Family gatherings were particularly charged. The carefully curated events, the formal dinners, the endless photo ops, each held the potential for subtle betrayals, small victories, and silent confrontations. Harry remembers moments of exclusion, of being laughed at or corrected in ways that William never was. He watched the hierarchy in action, internalized it, and learned the painful truth. In the royal world, perception was more important than affection. And yet, he clung to hope that love, even hidden, could bridge the gaps. But sometimes, love alone is not enough. School friends, sports teams, and army training offered brief relief. In these spaces, Harry could be Harry, impulsive, humorous, daring. He thrived on camaraderie, the rush of adventure, and moments where no one called him, Your Royal Highness. But even here, the past lingered, echoing in subtle anxieties, in moments of overcompensation, in the need to prove himself constantly. Every success, every achievement, was shadowed by questions he could not yet articulate. Who am I, really? Who made me who I am? And why does part of me feel disconnected from the people I am supposed to love most? By the time he reached young adulthood, these questions had become impossible to ignore. His instincts told him something was deeply, fundamentally different about his life than the narrative everyone else believed. And while he loved his family, respected the monarchy, and cherished his mother's memory, he felt an unshakable need to confront the truth. That need would only grow louder with time, setting the stage for the revelation that would shatter the palace, the public, and his own identity. Every child grows up with a story of their family in mind. Some stories are comforting. Some are cautionary. Harry's was neither. It was a labyrinth. A maze of affection and secrecy, loyalty and betrayal, expectation and rebellion. And at the center of that labyrinth lay a question he could not escape. Who truly shaped his life? And why had no one told him the full truth? And then came the moment that crystallized everything. The envelope, the DNA results, and the undeniable confirmation that James Hewitt, the man whispered about in corridors and tabloid pages for years, was his biological father. All the tension, all the questions, all the confusion of decades coalesced into a single, shocking truth. But the revelation was only the beginning. For every secret unearthed, another challenge awaited. Every truth uncovered demanded a response. And for Harry, that response would be nothing short of revolutionary. What came next would not just change his life, it would change the royal family forever. Have you ever received a letter that made your world stop? A letter that wasn't just paper and ink, but a weight that could crush decades of certainty in seconds. For Prince Harry, that letter arrived like a thunderclap in a quiet room, a reminder that the past doesn't stay buried, and that some truths refuse to be ignored. It began, as most explosive stories do, quietly. Harry was living in what he thought was a carefully managed balance of royal life and personal freedom. He had grown into his role as a public figure, a humanitarian, a brother, but always with a lingering unease, a sense that something in his life didn't quite fit. He had learned to navigate it, to smile for cameras, to fulfill obligations, but the questions never went away. And then the envelope came. No courier, no fanfare, just a discreet handover. The sort you might overlook if you weren't paying attention. But Harry, conditioned by years of palace precision and cryptic messages, noticed immediately. The weight of it felt different. The paper, the seal, the almost imperceptible care in its delivery, it all screamed, "This is important." And it was more important than he could have ever imagined.